Hey there, this is Sharon from Copycat Cards, and I'm in my stamp room today, all set up and ready to share another watercoloring tutorial using my Zig markers. And today I'm using Hero Art's Dahlias set. I would dearly love to buy new stamp sets that keep coming out and that are new releases with all the different wonderful companies. But as most of you know, we have to pace ourselves with that. And I have so many beautiful, wonderful stamp sets that I just want to be sure that I'm still using them and enjoying them. So that's why I've pulled out this older set from Hero Arts called Dahlias. All right, let's get started. I have pulled out a number of my Zig markers. The plan that I have for this particular piece is to create a very dark bluish black background, and I'm going to make the blossoms very vivid orangey red yellow combination, and that way it'll be a nice contrast to the dark background. Basically I cut a piece of watercolor paper 6x8 so that I could tape off an inch all the way around, which leaves a 5x7 thing in the center. I stamped and masked a number of the leaves and blossoms. I did that ahead of time, and embossed in gold using Brutus Monroe's gilded embossing powder. So I think what I'm going to do with this when I'm finished is put it in a frame, and that's why I made it this size. So I shall begin. I'm going to start with my black, and as I've demonstrated in prior videos, I just place a little bit of the color into the beginning of the little nooks and crannies, and then use a water brush or a watery paintbrush, which is what I'm using today, to soften and blend the color and to pull it out. I usually listen to my Pandora radio stations when I'm in my stamp room, but the people who are in charge of allowing music and such on our published videos don't like that I play songs that don't belong to me in the background, which is kind of annoying because I think that I wonder if I just played a regular radio station, if that would be fine. But anyway, I'll probably just chat a little bit as I'm working. You know, I'm going pretty lightly here because I'm going to be adding some midnight blue and some other shades of blue, but I wanted to lay down a base of the black first. Sometimes I think to myself, okay, today I'm going to start with the blossoms. I'm not going to do the background first, but I love doing backgrounds, and I usually end up doing them first. Interesting how some blacks fade out to other colors, kind of a purpley, rosy shade. I have to warn you, our little dog, Bear, is in the stamp room. He's behind me, repositioning his blankie, and if he hears anything outside, he may start barking, so just be prepared. If you've seen my videos before, you know that that's a thing. It's a quiet Monday afternoon. I have a private house cleaning business, and which is really great because it allows me to make some pretty good money, but have you know, fewer hours than if I worked a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job. And I really enjoy it because it gives me flexibility, and my schedule changes. So today I had 3 short clients. I was at work by, I think it was 9:30, and I was home by 2 o'clock. So that's not too bad. And I don't have any children in my home anymore. Our youngest daughter still lives with us as she's finishing up college. But she's in her 20s, so I don't have the responsibility of young children or anything like that. And so I have quite a bit of free time because of my job and the hours and the flexibility of that, to spend quite a bit of time in my stamp room. I feel very, very grateful. I really enjoyed reading your comments on the video that I did just the other day. I'm always hesitant to share these videos because they're so amateurish on the one hand, and they also tend to go on and on because I don't know how to do video editing, or I haven't really spent the time to learn how to do it, and to know how to speed things up and do all the overlays and the voiceovers and things like that. We're lucky that I remembered to make a video of this. More often than not, I just come in, sit down, and get busy. All right, well, so that's good enough for now. I'm going to use my heat tool to dry that a little bit before I add another layer of color. And right now I have to decide if I'm going to continue to work on the background or if I'm going to start in on the flowers and the leaves. I don't know. Okay. So for those of you who, feel a little bit intimidated by watercoloring or, using your zigs to watercolor, that shows you that if you're just doing just do a little bit at a time, it really is quite simple. In my last video, I was talking about the fact that it seems like my zig markers, the ink doesn't like to move as well when I've placed it on top of, dried, other dried layers, like what I'm doing right now. I'm, scribbling a little bit of color on, just like I did with the black. But see, there's still this mark that is from the original line, and it's still kind of there, and I don't like that. And I'm not quite sure why it does that. I think it might be because it's not just plain paper anymore. It has the ink from the other marker on it. But I think what I'm just going to do is add a little bit of the blue. I'm not going to fill in the whole thing with this midnight blue. I'm going to kind of do those little nooks and crannies again and make them the bluish black. I'm going to try and keep the color darker around the outside edges. That's cool. Oops, I put some there. Let's see what happens down here. You can really see the texture of the paper. Yeah. I need a little bit thicker brush. I have a motley assortment of brushes. I really should invest in some better quality brushes. Just really trying to draw that color out of that very obvious markered section. Okay, a little bit more up here. This brush is a little bit thicker than I want it to be, but that's okay. All right, again, I'm going to dry with my heat tool. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of this. It's called blue, but it looks very purpley to me. So let's see what it does. Oh, it's definitely blue. I think from now on I'm going to scribble onto my craft mat and pick up the ink from there rather than putting the marker onto the paper. Just have to remember to do that. Not loving this. Whoops, see, I forgot. All right. Okay, well that definitely is blue. I do want to add some purple in there. This is kind of a fuchsia purple. It's just says purple. Okay, again. I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to put on some droplets of water. Actually, I'm not going to do that until I'm finished with the whole thing. So I'm just going to dry this for now. And I'm going to use some teal. See if it shows up as teal. All right. Okay, let's work on this great big giant dahlia. I'm going to start with this brown. It has sort of a reddish tint to it, and I'm going to use it as the darkest shade of my reds because of that. I'm putting it at the base of these outer petals, but before I go too far, to add my red right on top of that, so when I draw that color up, it'll be red as well. As you can see, I'm just kind of scribbling on a little bit of the color. I'm not being real careful about how I place it. It's the water and the paintbrush that pulls the color and moves it and blends it. Now I'm just doing this, and I'm going to add some scarlet red, which is actually orangey. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this mustard. And then I'm going to use my brush and water and you can see I'm leaving some little white spots just as a little contrast. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to work on a leaf, and I have bunch of my green markers over here. I'm going to start with green down at the base and along there. But then I'm going to add olive green to that. Then I'm going to put in yellow green, which is quite my favorite, on the outside edges. Then I'm going to use my brush to let the three colors meet. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to do kind of the same thing down here. I'm putting the darker shade along here, just kind of under the petals of that other flower. And the water. How that's so heavy right there, so I'll use water to draw it down. I'm going to blot a little bit of the water. Let that dry and then I'll add more color. I'm going to switch out and use deep green. Here. I'm going to add it here as well. Here, I should wait till that's dry. And this time I'm going to use mid green, which is a lighter shade of olive. And I'm going to use my yellow green again. There. Hit it with a brush with a little bit of dampness and move on up to this leaf in the corner with the deep green, and then again with the mid green and some yellow green. And a wet brush. And then I will let that dry, and I will be adding more colors and things after. So I think I'm going to give it all a shot of air. And I'm going to start on this one here, and I'm going to begin with light brown, which is sort of a rusty orange. Put some of that in the little base, the base of some of these petals. And I'm going to add bright yellow. This looks orange to me. I'm a little, I don't know about these colors, color names. So this marker is called bright yellow, but to me it's like a light orange. And I'm going to add a little mustard, which actually looks similar to that first marker I used. Again, I'm just going to put water move the ink a little bit, but mostly let it sit there. And since that one tends to be more of an orangey, I'm going to make a yellow. I'm going to do this one as more of an orange. And I'm using orange. And this one is a fluorescent orange. And I'm just going to throw in a teeny bit. We'll see what that does. And I'll use this again. This is the red that is called Scarlet Red, but it's a little bit orangey. So I'm going to pop some of that in there. Now, a very wet brush. I'm mainly dropping the water on and barely moving it. I'm going to let that dry. And work on these. So I think I'll make this one and I'm going to do this one. This one's called Geranium Red. I'll let that dry. You saw that I added a little bit of the Geranium Red. The Geranium Red is actually a truer red than I thought. I'm going to add some of this into some of these little nooks and crannies where I had started out with the brown as a dark red. And I'm going to use my brush with some water to soften that a little bit. If my markers get water on them, they tend to get kind of washed out. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to add a little of this in here. I'm just kind of you can see I'm just kind of tapping my marker up and down. There's quite a bit of water still on that blossom, so it's kind of watering down my red as it's coming out. So I think I'm going to let that be, let that dry, or dry it. You see that this dried and left behind sort of a little brownish tint. That's pretty. I realized that this didn't really get colored. That's part of that. Make that that. I just colored over the stem. Darn it. I better leave that alone. Okay. This is light brown. I'm going to add this marker that's called bright yellow but looks like light orange. And then I'm going to use some water to soften that. Oh, I see. Isn't that interesting? It's quite yellow. It's so odd. Why did they make the plastic part so orangey? But that's very pretty. I think I'll leave that as is. I think I'm going to add a touch of orange to this one. I'm putting it on top of the red, but then when I use my water, it'll move it into the other part, the lighter areas. That's good. All right, and I actually am going to start with deep green directly below the blossoms. Then I'll add my olive green. I did color the stem there. And then my yellow green. And then my water. Okay, I'm going to come in here and play with this. And up here as well. I I love how the colors did this right here. I think I want to take a yellow, this is just yellow, and just kind of scribble that over that, a little bit here. Next, I'm going to use a little bit of gray. This is mid-gray, and I'm going to use this to try and add a little more shading. Just do a little bit and then move it with the water. I don't know if this is going to help. Like each petal needs to be a little more defined. It's a little hard to see where the petals begin and end with all the paint covering up the embossing, but and you can see I'm pretty slap happy with the water. So I'm just going to leave like that. I'm going to do the same over here though. Just quick little strokes for a little definition. And then some water to soften it. And a little up here. I think it's better to do one at a time and then add the water. And then I'll do the same with this. Yeah. Yeah. This one, the ink kind of stuck on to the color below it. Well, what do you think? Now I'm using dark gray. And I'm going to switch out paintbrushes. I'm going to try this one. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done with most of the watercoloring. I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to add the spatters of water first, because adding the water will remove ink where the little droplets go and just leave kind of a very cool effect that way. And then I'm probably going to spatter on some white craft paint after. Actually, as I'm looking at it, this kind of dark blue background makes it look like flowers floating around in outer space. And if I add white spatters that look like stars, good grief. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Okay, I think that's pretty dry. So, here we go with some water. And the water will go on the blossoms and the background. Oop, that was a big blob. All right, I'm going to let it sit for just a minute. Then I'm going to blot it. And you can see there's some nice little spatters. Kind of gave added texture. I don't like how the color just seems to be washed out from this corner, so I'm going to add some of that. Move it with my brush, and that's good. Okay. Last step, a little bit of white craft paint. I just unscrew the cap. There's paint in the lid, so I'm going to get a little bit, make it watery. I don't want too blobby. I know a lot of people use a toothbrush and they use their thumb and like pull it back and spatter it on, but sometimes I get it in my face instead of where I want it to go. So this is just easier. So this definitely looks like flowers in outer space. Ah, well, it's still pretty. And I hope that it was helpful to you to see how I did this. And I'm going to dry it one more time to get those little white spatters dried. Then I'm going to remove the tape, which is always a really fun part because it's so cool to see the nice crisp lines. And that'll be that. I think it's dry. Yay! Okay, let's start with this. Pull slowly and carefully so that it doesn't tear your paper. And I will set these aside to reuse because I'm frugal that way. And this one. Isn't that fun? And this one, oops, that's tearing the paper. Oh, that's tearing the paper too. Now, why is it doing that, I wonder? Huh. Well, I think that part will be behind the mat anyway, but that's disappointing. Interesting. These two lower pieces of, it's really tearing the paper. Ugh, frustrating. But look at that. That looks beautiful. Oh my goodness. I love taping it down first. So I don't know if you can see this really well. I'll hold it up. I think that came out really nicely. You can really see the torn cardstock. But it's still very beautiful. Thank you for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I love hearing from you, and I feel very privileged to be able to do this and share it with all of my stamping and crafty creative friends. Until the next time, talk to you later.